Good afternoon. It is 1:30, so we will be getting started within the minute. If everyone will go ahead and put your uh, name and organization in the chat, or at least your organization. And Jerry, I owe you some answers to some questions I think you may get today, but I'm sure there will be many more. Okay. We have this meeting is being recorded so that you can come back and refer to it later, or for those who are unable to attend, because we know this is a very compressed timeline. Everything was kind of released very quickly, and so not everyone would be able to attend this. So it is recorded, it will be posted and shared, and that will count as meeting that mandatory attendance requirement for project applicants. So we're going to get started. I'm Sherry Holtzbacher. I'm the CEO of the Homeless Leadership Alliance, and we also have Cindy Kozowicz on, and she will be monitoring the chat. We have Alicia Hilton here as well. She's doing a lot of the behind the scenes logistics, running through the PowerPoint, and making sure that everyone has access to this conference. And then we also have Susan Porchot has joined us again as our NOFO consultant this year. She's been incredibly valuable and helpful in making sense of everything that is new and working with us to try to make this um, a useful experience as well as more streamlined and as smooth an experience as possible so we can submit the best application as we can that'll get the most points to HUD. Uh, it is like I said, a very quick turnaround. The due date for the entire application process, which the local competition is just part of, is June. I'm sorry, yeah, I wish it was June, January 14th. And so our intention is to have it submitted to HUD by the 12th. We all like to put in some cushion there. Uh, anyway, just really glad that you all are joining us, knowing that this was dropped. The RFA, the request for applications, was sent out on 2 o'clock Thanksgiving morning. You're welcome. It was really a way to give people as much time as possible to review that. It really wasn't to take away from any of your holiday plans. And so I apologize for that, but due to HUD's timeline, we just as wanted to give as much time as possible for people to give this thought. Okay. So we can go to the next slide, Alicia. Thank you. Wow. Okay, so again, this is a very different NOFO. It's unprecedented. If you've had a chance to read through the request for applications or the NOFO itself, which I highly recommend, especially in the areas that are going to be very applicable to you. Uh, it's different in the sense that there are projects that have not been, it's just, traditionally, covered projects are now lower in significance. They've been significantly capped. And also, there are new project types that haven't been favored by HUD for over a decade, almost 2 decades, that are now eligible and are more aligned with HUD's new direction. And so we do anticipate and hope that we do have new project applicants as well, and so that we can review for the review and rank committee. We are going to we're going to dig in pretty soon. We're going to have an overview of the CoC program, NOFO. We'll have an overview of our funding available for our CoC and the local competition process, which is, again, a bit different. HUD has not released the application in eSnaps just yet, and that is the route that we are hoping to go. If it turns into a situation where by Thursday we do not see that eSnaps has that application available to everyone, then we're going to go to Plan B, and we'll put out a local application and scoring tool at that point. It was just a that was a strategic decision to be helpful for both project applicants and for staff and the review and rank committee. It'll make it much more streamlined if information is put directly in eSnaps, especially since we're anticipating new projects and new agencies to be joining this who may need more technical assistance, which will be provided as well. Better to do it now than towards the end. And plus, we just want to make sure that everyone's very aware of what HUD's requirements are, that they're in alignment with their project applications, that certifications are taken care of because of all the changes, so that the projects can meet threshold requirements per HUD standards. Okay, and then finally, then how to learn more. Even after this, there'll be a Q&A period at the end of this applicant conference. However, questions are you are welcome to reach out to us with any questions you have, whether they be technical or programmatic. You want to talk about the project, and if it meets threshold review, any of that, please reach out. The best way, I really want to emphasize this, will be through our CoC NOFO at hlapinellas.org email address, and that is in the RFA as well as on the websites for both the CoC, pinellascoc.org, and HLA's website. And it's also in our PowerPoint presentation here. So you will have access to that email address. Make sure to reach, if you do that, it's best, more eyes, you'll get the best response from the right person, and it will not get lost in a CEO's inbox, which you can imagine happens. So I don't rely on me. Please send it to CoC NOFO. It's fine if you want to reach out to me directly as well. But that is definitely, they'll help keep us together, especially with everything that is going on right now. I want to make sure that you're served well. Okay. Next slide, please, Alicia. So, overview of the fiscal year 2025 HUD CoC program NOFO. We can go on to the next slide, but before I really dig into that, this last year, many of you who were in the applicant process or had projects that you applied for that were funded, contracted through HUD, we knew that last year was intended to be a 2-year NOFO. So it was going to cover 2 full years, allow us extra time for planning and system design, that sort of thing. And that apparently that just has not happened. So now we are this was not going to be the plan for last year. So for those of you who were expecting to have contracts renewed, of course, now we are in a different season. So the first goal, we put this information together in a way to really emphasize that this is not the HLA or the CoC. We are looking at what HUD is specifically asking for and prioritizing and emphasizing. And so we've used language directly from the NOFO so that you can to really drive home what HUD is looking for in these projects. And so to have the best chance of moving forward, it's important to really take this seriously. For the first goal, it's around ending street homelessness. So it is HUD's clear directive is that CoCs must reduce street homelessness, encampments, public camping, and visible disorder. That is, since we're in Florida, we have anti-camping laws. We have other laws that are in alignment with HUD's focus right now too. So that actually for the purpose of this NOFO works in our favor. HUD is also looking for more coordination with law enforcement agencies. And we know that anyone involved in the task force last year after HB 1365, we also knows that we do have very strong partnerships with law enforcement, but project applicants as well should be really driving that home in your applications. Any MOUs, formal agreements you have with law enforcement, any work that you do with law enforcement would be important. We have street outreach teams that are connected with law enforcement. So we have Safe Harbor, which is again with the sheriff's office. So that is something that HUD is looking for is more coordination with law enforcement and applicants. Applicants must also demonstrate outreach, intervention, and measurable movement towards stability and self-sufficiency. Uh, so they are looking at shorter term projects versus the longer term projects with the goal of self-sufficiency and reducing street homelessness. Okay, next slide. Next one is prioritizing treatment and recovery. CoCs are expected to prioritize projects that provide treatment and recovery services for people to become self-sufficient. That is mentioned many times throughout the NOFO. Projects are prioritized when they include those that include wraparound services, behavioral health treatment that's actually on site, behavioral health treatment, substance use disorder services, co-occurring services. All projects submitted should have service participation requirements. This is a departure from previous guidance or requirements around housing first or low barrier models. So we are moving more into a service participation requirement as a condition for housing assistance. And it is also important to note for transitional housing, which is a new project type that is allowed now and encouraged, favored by this NOFO, that there is a 40-hour-a-week service requirement per client, which can be reduced or maybe waived if the person is over the age of 65 or 62. Somebody may need to check me on that, Susan.
They
So,
don't say what they don't say how they define elderly.
oh,
A
okay.
lot of COCs are interpreting it to mean 62.
Okay, that's right. So, well, 62 or plus, which we know is in our CoC is an area or a population that is actually growing, is a significant portion compared to the rest of the population, disproportionately represented in our homeless community. And so services for 40 hours a week per client may be reduced or waived if client is working. So they are putting in 40 hours of work, then that counts if they're elderly or physically disabled. And I want to emphasize physical disabilities. The third goal is advancing public safety. And again, it goes back to the working with law enforcement, cooperating with law enforcement, and should prevent trauma of street homelessness, especially for women and children. Uh, when it talks about trauma-informed care within this NOFO, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I believe that does show up. It's really specific to having um, woman-only spaces and bathrooms. That is something that will be important to be considering in the design of your projects and the environmental reviews and that sort of thing. Um, Again, HUD prioritizes communities with camping bans and similar approaches, which in Pinellas County in the state of Florida, we do have. Next. Okay, promoting self-sufficiency. Um, HUD wants projects that meaningfully increase employment and earned income. So CoC projects should partner with workforce development, childcare, and similar services. Again, aim is to increase employment income. In the past, I know that through HMIS, most of you do enter into HMIS, that there is a increased income that's non-employment related. So that may be because of Social Security benefits or other government benefits. Um, This NOFO specifically does not include that. It excludes that as the measurable. It's looking for increasing employment, earned income. And COC should prioritize projects leading to long-term economic independence and self-sufficiency. Um, so that would be important to include any metrics, any data that you have in the past that shows that increase in income and earned income and self-sufficiency would be useful to include in this, would be helpful to include in this project application. Okay, next. Okay. So improving outcomes, I kind of just covered that a bit, but there is, so COCs, this is not new. COCs earn more points or are viewed more favorably when they reallocate renewals that don't reduce homelessness. Um, but then this one goes a step further and increases self-sufficiency. So any project that would be a renewal project that cannot demonstrate that may run into some problems with HUD or getting through review and rank. I need to state that um, just to be fully transparent. So renewals can choose to voluntarily reallocate. CoC should prioritize projects that lead to self-sufficiency. I'm going to say that over and over again. Increase employment income. I'm going to say that over and over again. And promote recovery. HUD wants to see the pool of providers expanded, renewals reallocated, and outcomes improved. Those specific outcomes that have been mentioned above. Minimizing trauma, goal 6. I believe that is the last goal that we have to cover. CoC projects, it goes back to that trauma-informed care piece that I mentioned earlier. It's around public safety and, I'm sorry, and it's encouraging trauma-informed care and to ensure safety is the language from HUD. Specifically, women should have access to safe single-sex spaces and accommodations for privacy. And it is important to note that in this NOFO, it is, and in the CoC builds NOFO, where we had a hint of this already, is that, and in our HUD universal data standards that recently came out that HMIS has been training everyone on and has updated through HMIS, that we've moved away from gender and we are looking at sex as binary. So it's male, female, does not know or prefers not to answer are the responses. And so that is, all of that is in response to this NOFO and the new universal data elements. And so when we say women here, we are meaning birth sex. Or HUD is intending that to mean birth sex. Okay, next. Okay, eligible project applicants. Are there any questions that have come up just yet? In the chat?
Jerry, Amy Foster has a question. Well, not necessarily a question, but something that Amani is looking into. She said that, can I flag for HMIS that programs are having issues pulling their data for 62 and up? If I remember, people can pull 55 and up and 65 and up. Not sure if there is a fix for that.
Okay, so Imani's checking into that. Because I know that in our data system performance committee, we do pull out the 62 to 65 age group that happened about the time about a year ago. And so thank you, Imani, for checking into that. And we will flag that as a question to any questions that we receive here or through the CoC NOFO inbox will be collected, compiled, and then shared publicly to everybody with the responses. Thank you, Amy. Okay. So eligible project applicants include nonprofit organizations, including faith-based organizations, and that is something that is being driven home by HUD and by the current administration that there be no discrimination against faith-based organizations, so they are welcome to apply. They must have a 501c3 certification, federal UEI, and SAM.gov registration, and must meet capacity threshold. So very important that if you are a new organization to the CoC or to this process, that you get registered in SAM and that you also get started in eSNAPs. There's a full toolkit. We'll talk about that later, but those are two things to do now as quickly as possible. It's also open to public housing authorities, local and state governments, and tribes. Um, Again, we decided to and are hoping to be able to fulfill this strategy, and that is to go through eSNAPs for all of our project applications. When you do that, whether it happened now or if you were chosen as a project to move forward by the CoC to be submitted to HUD in the rankings, then you must certify that you will not engage in racial preferences or other forms of illegal discrimination. That project applicants must also certify that they will not engage in certain activities under the pretext of harm reduction. So those are needle exchanges, things of that nature. And HUD may verify past performance. This is very important. And reject a project if there is evidence that has previously or currently engaged or engages in racial preferences or other forms of illegal discrimination, again, from the NOFO. Engaged or engages in activities that violate the sex binary in humans, that goes back to male, female. And engaged or engages in any activities under the pretext of harm reduction. So it's something to keep in mind. It's something that we have, we've been sending questions to HUD to ask for more clarification. I believe that the projects because we know that many projects may have done that. So that's why we are opening it up to so many more projects to make sure that we try to align as closely as we can with what HUD is requiring here. Okay, next slide. Overview of funding available in the local process, the competition. HUD calls it a competition. I know that sound doesn't really ring very well with a lot of people, so just know that that's HUD language. And it is competitive. We do look at scoring and performance and things of that nature, but we also pay attention to what the system needs in our local community because that's why CoCs exist. So all of that is taken into account by the Review and Rank Committee and everyone involved in the process. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. I know that there are a lot of people who are going to be viewing this recording or are currently here who have not engaged in this process before. So I'm going to go through what each of these lines mean. Estimated annual renewal demand. So first, let me just start with overall, the total available to our CoC is more than what was available last year. It just comes with it's just very different. So the estimated annual renewal demand, you'll also hear that called the ARD. That is the total amount that was awarded for all of our renewals, for all of our current renewals, all the projects that were awarded last year. The CoC bonus project amount, there is a bonus project available. It's $1.5 million. That is for new projects. That does not include, though, new projects that may be able to be put into the rankings that fit into our overall formula because of reallocations. So when a renewal project doesn't renew, then those funds can be reallocated to another project. Or if a renewal project does submit an application, chooses to renew, then during the review and rank committee process, deliberations, then it can be decided that whether or not it meets performance or threshold criteria and if it should move forward. If the review and rank committee decides not to move it forward, then they can reallocate those funds to another project that's new. If there's still the opportunity, of course, for a an agency with a project to decide not to renew that project and to voluntarily reallocate. And we are looking at ways um, to incentivize that, knowing that there is a 30% cap on most of the projects that were funded by our previous CoC program. The DV bonus project amount, same as CoC bonus. This is available funds, $777,000, available funds for a new DV project. And it's only for DV project. And it's important to know that any project that has been funded presently or in the past under a DV bonus must remain with DV, domestic violence agencies, for the remainder of the term. It cannot be reallocated to a general program at all or a general project. And then there's the planning project amount, which is $388,000. That's pretty standard. It's increased a bit, but that is only available to the HLA. It's not ranked, reviewed, or part of that annual renewal demand. It is approved or not approved by the Review and Rank Committee and the CoC. Cindy? Cindy, do you have a yes?
I do have my hand up, thank you. Jerry Flanagan has a question about where did the CoC bonus amount come from? I thought it was 20% of our eligible renewal amount.
This comes directly from HUD. And so that was the amount that they had listed. That's the amount that they had listed for us. Susan, do you have anything else to add to that? I want to make sure I'm not misspeaking.
No, you're right. HUD published what they call the annual renewal demand report, which includes all of these numbers. The ARD, the CoC bonus, the DV bonus, and the planning amount. So that's a report that HUD publishes.
Were there any other questions? Okay. Going to the cap on permanent housing projects, you'll notice that the tier 1 amount, and I'll explain that in a moment, and the cap are both the same amount. They're both 30% of the total estimated annual renewal demand. However, they are not the same thing. They just happen to be the same amount and the same percentage. The 30% cap on permanent housing projects, which is almost $1.86 million. That cap is for all permanent housing projects, whether they are new projects or renewal projects. It's for our entire project priority listings. So that's something to keep in mind, that it's not just the tier 1 projects, it's for all permanent housing. Permanent housing, this year, I know we've been discussing a lot about permanent supportive housing in the past, but it also includes rapid rehousing, shelter plus care, which is under permanent supportive housing, and transitional housing / rapid rehousing that goes to DV providers. So anything that was considered permanent housing by HUD is under that cap. The tier 1 amount is also 30%. So it's the same. Tier 1, there's 2 tiers for anyone who's new. The top tier 1 is typically considered safe funding. It's typically non-competitive. It goes through with no problem. And then based on the strength of our application that the HLA works on, and then submits, and the project, it's a variety of factors. It's the application, it's the priority listings, and how the mix of projects are there and their performance. All of that goes into our scoring. And the tier 1 is typically safe. Tier 2 is more competitive. It's nationally competitive and gets funded based on the strength of our score there. Last year, our tier 1 was 90%. This year it's 30%. So major shrink in the amount that we would consider safe. But even in this year, I would say, if you read the NOFO, it's very clear that threshold requirements are in place that are that HUD can pull a project out of tier 1 if it does not deem that it aligns with the priorities or the requirements. Any questions about that? Oh, okay. So Susan just put in the chat. That makes sense. The COC bonus is 20% of the final pro rata need, not 20% of the annual renewal of demand. And she included the pro rata. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to do a big picture overview. This is not the full timeline that comes in the following slide, just the big picture overview of the HUD funding process, especially for newer projects. HUD releases a NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, and then HLA and everybody reviews this NOFO and takes that information. And sometimes even in years that are pretty, typical or standard from my understanding, there are still things that we do refine that may be different, that we have to then adjust our request for applications or a scoring tool, or so we make those adjustments. You can see how lengthy it is. Anyone who's a grant writer, you're my sister or brother, and that is you just have to read every single word and make sure that you understand. Since this one was so new, we really needed to put it out quickly because of the compressed timeline, and so we're doing our best to understand everything. Like all other COCs, putting out a lot of questions to make sure that those are clarified. But HLA then takes what HUD has given us. We put in a request for applications locally. And then a review and rank committee determines the ranking and the funding recommendations for projects. That is open to the public. They score the applications first. HLA compiles the information, sends it back, and then there's a deliberation period in person. Once that review and rank committee determines the ranking and funding allocations, then they recommend those over to the executive committee, which then approves it. And then HLA completes an application that's called the consolidated application, and it includes those priority listings. And we have the COC approve it, and then we submit it to HUD, and then HUD selects projects for funding. It can take there's a range in how long it takes to hear back from HUD on those awards to give the conditional award amounts, but they have up to 6 months. That was something that we did find in some small print in in our act. So that is something to keep in mind too. But it typically varies. I hear like between 3 and 4 months is typical. Susan, does that sound right to you?
Um, it it has happened that quickly in the past, although my guess is that it will be on the longer side this year because there are so many variables in the review at the HUD level.
Mm-hmm. Thank you
Sure.
for
I was on a
that.
national call yesterday and they said don't expect contracts before June.
Okay, I was going to say
June
that.
would be early, right? And so we need to be planning for if programs have contracts ending before that time frame. I think we need to understand what that gap is going to be to plan locally for it.
Right. And so June would be the 6 month mark or later actually. And then May is in the NOFO as a target. I will say that if there are, based on the COC builds process, there were 3 different NOFOs that came out of that rescinded the previous one. So we really can't say for certain what the process is going to look like after this. I don't want to misspeak on that at all or give, false hope about that. We are moving forward because we need to ensure that we just get the best chance for keeping people, our system going and people housed, and getting the assistance that they need. Okay. Next slide, please. And here's the expanded timeline. In the request for applications, there is a complete timeline. It has, like, for instance, tomorrow by 2 p.m., letters of intent are due. So make sure you get those in. Very simple form, just to give us an idea for planning purposes. But so the request for applications was issued on the 26th. We're having the applicant conference today. Letters of intent are due tomorrow, like I said, December 3rd at 2 p.m. by 2 p.m. And they must be signed at the very end. I want to reiterate that too. It's one form, but it has several sections, like each page allows for another project. And at the very end of the packet is a signature page. So make sure that you have all that completed and submitted to the CoC NOFO inbox. On December 12th, project applications are due in eSnaps. Again, this timeline is subject to change, or the way that we receive applications may be subject to change as well, depending on when HUD does release detailed application instructions. December 18th is the tentative review and rank committee meeting, where they will be conducting deliberations and determining the recommendations for projects to move forward to the executive committee for approval. December 19th, immediately following that, applicants will be notified. And then we do have an appeals process. So appeals will open and they will be due by December 23rd. And applicants who were appealing will be notified by December 29th. And final project revisions in eSnaps will be January 6th. That is for the local competition. There's more that happens after that and behind the scenes as well on the application for the whole CoC. Okay. Eligible project types. So this is where a lot of changes have also happened. Supportive services only for street outreach, that's new. Standalone supportive services and coordinated entry. So if your project fits under any of those, or if you have any questions about this, please reach out. But for coordinated entry, it's for HLA's coordinated entry, or DV agencies can also apply for SSO coordinated entry for DV as well as a new project. Transitional housing, that's new this year. And one of the favored projects, that and street outreach. Permanent housing is, you can submit a new project for permanent housing under rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing. They just have certain restrictions to look at in the RFA as well as in the NOFO if they are a new project. And then HMIS is welcome to and will be, I hope, submitting an application that's for HLA only, as well as planning. And like I said, planning is restricted to just lead agencies. It's not reviewed, ranked. It is reviewed. It is not ranked or anything like that. It is a accept or reject application. Renewal projects are also able to apply. But all projects, and those include all the projects on our grant inventory worksheet. So that's BOLI, CASA, and the HLA. But again, just keeping in mind all those, what HUD is expecting for this upcoming year, or right now, what their priorities are, and that those certifications that are required, and that projects meet those threshold requirements too. Okay, next slide. Submitting project applications through eSnaps. If you're like me and it's been a while, I know that we are, well, if you're like me and it's been a while since you've played around in eSnaps, make sure that you go in and update your password. If you have any issues with your password, the screen will tell you who to contact at HUD, and they've been so far, they've been very quick at responding. If you've never used eSnaps before, I would go and definitely look at the eSnaps toolkit that is listed in the RFA. Click on that, review that. You're most likely still going to have questions. We always, even from the veterans, the people who are very used to using this process, we tend to find there are issues that have to be worked through, are cleaned up. And so just email us but try to do it as soon as possible. So go in there now and start looking at it if you are not familiar with eSnaps. Make sure that you have an account set up. And then reach out to us as soon as possible if you need any help. We will provide one-on-one technical assistance for that. The deadline for submission in eSnaps, if the application is made available in eSnaps, is December 12th at 8 p.m. If it is not, then we will have another local application prepared for you to complete before then as well. But same submission deadline. Julietta?
Hi, yeah, sorry. I just have a quick question. The letter of intent that you have to submit, would you have to submit that through eSnaps or is that somewhere else that you have to submit it through?
You would submit, that's a good question, thank you. You would submit that directly to our inbox, or you don't have to submit that through eSteps. It's submitted to cocnofo at hlapinellas.org.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mhm. Yeah, so the letter of intent and the project application, two very different things. That I want to make sure that that's clear too. So once you submit a letter of intent, you're not done for sure.
And
Okay,
if
thank you.
and if I can add, there's a specific letter of intent form
Mhm.
that the CoC has issued. So if you would use that specific form, that would be helpful.
Yes. It does not require, it is a very simple form, the way that it's laid out. Okay. Uh, Anything else, Susan, that you want to add about, oh, here's more eSnaps. Again, they have not made, HUD has not made the project applications available through eSnaps yet. They promised to do so soon. We work off of a start from the end, and there are certain timelines, milestones we have to meet within certain timeframes for HUD. And so this is the local competition is one piece of it. And in order to complete the rest of it, you have to seriously work backwards. And so that's why this local competition seems like it's so fast, even though there's some time left towards the end. Uh, at some point, we will see what happens when, like I said, if eSnaps does not open up an application, then we will have one for you. When they are available in eSnaps, everyone who submitted a letter of intent will be notified by email. We will let you know by HLA. And the local scoring tools will be posted to the CoC's funding page. And we'll make sure that you know about that too. It'll be very widely disseminated. In the meantime, you can do other things you need to get ready. So you know what the applications are like, the basic components of what HUD is looking for, the certifications are required, and you can start working on that. You can also, like I said earlier, create your eSnaps user accounts and your applicant profile. I'd get started on that right away. And begin planning out your projects based on this information that you already have so that when eSnaps opens up or when the application is dropped, then you're ready to move forward. Okay, next screen, please. The review and rank process. The review and rank committee is approved by the executive committee. And it will score all projects using the scoring tools that will be posted to the website once we know we have more clarification on what HUD is looking for so that we're completely aligned. And so they will be posted as soon as the project applications are available in eSnaps or we have to move to Plan B. The review and rank committee will meet to discuss and finalize scores for each project. They review all the project applications and then they complete a scoring tool. They determine whether any project should be rejected for like not meeting threshold. We will consult with them if there is a project that in the early stages when we first receive it, if it does meet threshold and moves forward or not. They determine the levels of funding to be recommended, including whether any funding should be reallocated away from a renewal project to help fund new projects. And during this process, they are not only looking at scores, like I said earlier, they're looking at the impact on the system and what we need here in Pinellas. And so what we're prioritizing and that it's aligned with HUD's priorities as well. And so there will be moments where the review and rank committee will have questions about can we move these funds, or what happens if we move these funds over here, or if we don't fund this project fully, is what will happen. Will you have capacity to see the project through? Those sort of questions are routinely asked during these deliberations. Um, so, and then they rank the projects in order of funding priority, which is a requirement of HUD's that we then submit to HUD as the priority listings. The executive committee, after the review and rank committee meets, the executive committee will then meet and review their recommendations, and then they will finalize decisions about which projects to include in the application to HUD, the ranks, and the funding recommended for the projects. They can also choose to send it back to the review and rank committee. That has happened, but this is the typical process. Okay, I'm going to have Susan go over HUD's threshold criteria.
Okay, thank you, Sherry.
Mhm.
And again, feel free to put some questions in the chat box and we'll get those answered in a little bit. So HUD has very explicitly said that COCs should consider seriously the goals and objectives they put forward. They've also published in the NOFO specific threshold criteria for different kinds of projects. So depending on your project type, there's a different kind of threshold criteria. It is not a new thing for HUD to have threshold criteria for projects, but it is new that they are so specific and kind of prescriptive. And HUD has also said that you will not be able to go under contract for funding unless you meet each and every item on the threshold criteria. So we thought it would be important to cover these in some detail so that you can make sure to include all of these items in your project applications. So let's take a look at the first one. For transitional housing, and just by way of explanation, transitional housing is short-term housing, not permanent housing, but it's a place or places where households can stay for up to 24 months while they work on other things like employment, substance use, and so on, childcare, those sorts of things. So what HUD is requiring transitional housing providers to do first is to provide individualized support services that will help people regain self-sufficiency. Second, they want you to explain what prior experience you've had operating transitional housing or similar programs. And I would include projects that work with people experiencing homelessness. Third, they've outlined very specific outcomes they expect. They want at least 50% of clients in your transitional housing program to exit to permanent housing. And they want at least 50% to exit with employment income. And clients there I would define as households. So if you're serving families with children, that would be the head of household, adult who is exiting with employment income. Fourth, they want the project supplemented with other resources. And of course, you have to provide for all CoC funded, HUD CoC funded projects, you have to provide at least a 25% match, cash or in kind. But they also want you in the application to talk about how you'll work with mainstream resources like behavioral health providers and so on. Then clients in transitional housing, and this is specific to transitional housing projects, clients, the 40-hour work per week per client of supportive services is specific to transitional housing. So what that would mean, they don't describe exactly what that looks like, but it would probably look like employment readiness programs, substance use treatment, mental health counseling, just a variety of supportive services, including case management, but not limited to that. But then you can reduce the 40 hours per week per client if, for instance, someone is working or is elderly or has a physical disability. Clients are required to participate in services, as Sherry mentioned before, and you'll have to be able to document that with a supportive services agreement. So a form basically that says you will participate in services like, that look like this, and then you would have the client and the case manager, for instance, both sign that agreement. So you'll need to draft that agreement to include in your project application. And then lastly, and this is true for every project type, the average per household or client cost is reasonable. They don't define what reasonable is, so it's left fairly vague. My sense is that it's probably going to, be reasonable unless it's clearly unreasonable. So if transitional housing costs $100,000 per household, that's unreasonable. But I'm sorry that we can't offer more guidelines about what that particular criteria means. It's just fairly unsettled at this point. So let's look at your next project type. Supportive services only is what SSO stands for. And I'm sorry about my dogs. The first type is called the standalone project. That is supportive services to people who are not in one of your housing programs. So that might be serving people, you might be a behavioral health provider. You're providing services to people who are unsheltered or in an emergency shelter. For that type of project, you have to do at least an annual assessment of participant needs. You have to have a strategy for providing supportive services, either by doing it yourself or by partnering with collaborative agencies. You must, again, have your project supplemented with other resources and make sure they're cost effective. Let's go to the next one.
Susan, we do have a message on the chat from Jerry Flanagan.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you can see it, but she says, we want to consolidate 2 PSH projects into one. We can only do that through renewal, and we will be unable to alter the budget. The budget will need to be reduced via reallocation. Is this possible? Can I explain this on the LOI?
So I would explain that on the LOI. An alternative would be to not do a renewal, but to do a new project with the budget that you want to ask for. That is essentially combining your 2 legacy PSH projects. But I would explain what you want to do on your LOI, and that will be enough to kind of get you into the mix. And then when we start working on the projects themselves, then we can revisit kind of what the best way to do that would be. Okay, the next project type is SSO Street Outreach. That's outreach to people who are living in places not meant for human habitation or unsheltered. You have to have a strategy for providing supportive services, either yourself or through partners. Has to be supplemented with other resources. Services are cost effective. So those are all kind of things that we've talked about before. But for this one in particular, the 2 that stand out are that you as the project applicant have a history of working cooperatively with law enforcement, and you have experience and effectiveness helping people get out of unsheltered homelessness. So that can look a lot of different ways depending on what type of services you've offered in the past. But what you will need to do in your project application is address those items specifically so that you'll be awarded those threshold points. Next slide, please. And then for permanent supportive housing, some of these are self-explanatory. The housing you provide meets the needs of participants. The services will help people maintain housing. A new one this year is that PSH prioritize people who are elderly and those with physical and or developmental disabilities, and they specifically say not including substance use disorders. So that will require, if you are currently operating PSH, that will require kind of a rethinking of the model and what that's going to look like. Again, clients are required to participate in services, and you need to document that with an agreement. And then the ones we've talked about before, the cost and the supplemented with other resources. Okay, and then I think we have rapid rehousing next. So rapid rehousing, I should have said this on an earlier slide, permanent supportive housing, for those of you who are kind of new to the language, is permanent housing like apartments that are not time limited. People can stay in them and be assisted as long as they need to be. Rapid rehousing, which is this slide, on the other hand, is time limited. It's rental assistance that helps people for up to 24 months. So this is different from transitional housing in that transitional housing, they're not in, say, their own apartment with their own lease, but they might be in a facility or they might be in an apartment that is leased by the organization. In rapid rehousing, people have their own leases in their own apartments or homes, and they can get their rent paid for up to 24 months. Similarly, they receive supportive services. You'll need to explain in your project application what experience you have operating programs, specifically where employment income it has been improved. And the HUD language is as compared to an average CoC project. So you can find out from HLA kind of what the average CoC project has achieved in terms of employment income, and you would want to work to do better than that, is what HUD would like to see. Again, households are required to participate in services, and that must be documented. And then you've got the supplemental resources and average cost requirements. Okay, and then finally, some kind of overall requirements. Homelessness prevention projects, while valuable, are not an eligible project type. So if that's what you're looking to do, you can't apply for this kind of funding. I will put, after I finish talking, in the chat a link to the regulations that govern this program and this funding, and where you can see kind of what the project types are and what the allowable budget line items are. So you have to serve people who are experiencing homelessness as HUD defines that. That includes households that are fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, stalking, human trafficking, that sort of thing. All projects must participate in the Pinellas HMIS system unless they're DV-specific programs, and then they can participate in a comparable database. All projects similarly have to participate in the CoC's coordinated entry system and accept referrals into the project from that system. If you have questions about what HMIS and coordinated entry are, then you can email that email address that I'll put in the chat after I finish talking. And then finally, a threshold criteria that HUD looks at, as will the local competition, is that project applicants must have the administrative and program capacity to implement the project. So if you are a brand new nonprofit, you have no staff and no funding, it might be a challenge to meet this threshold criteria. So you have to really describe in your project application the capacity you have, which might be volunteer, but you have to convince HUD that you will in fact be able to implement the project if it's funded. I think that's it for me. Back to you, Sherry.
Thank you, Susan. Did you mention the pass-fail for threshold?
No, that's a good point. So yeah, those threshold criteria are pass fail, and if you fail, then your project won't be funded. To either have those service, either services are required of participants or they're not. And if they are not, then you won't be funded by HUD, as an example.
Yeah, thank you. Just really important information to keep in mind when developing your applications. Okay, so how to learn more? It's the CoC NOFO at hlapinellas.org if you have any questions. You can also read the RFA, read the NOFO itself is important. And as updates come, we will be sharing that on our website, on the CoC website, and link to the HLA website as well. Is there another slide out of this? Because I don't want to go ahead. Okay, and here are some resources also to look at. So there's the Pinellas CoC website / that is where we keep the information. We also have sent out through Constant Contact. We are getting it out on social media as well. But the best place to check is on that website. There's a link to the actual NOFO itself from HUD. There's the HUD CoC competition landing page. So if you click on the FY25 Continuing Care competition, then there are more resources there. We have HUD's eSnaps toolkits and other resources for eSnaps are available through HUD Exchange. And then the actual link to eSnaps is the final one available there. Okay, so there's our email address for all questions and to submit those letters of intent by tomorrow at 2. And then assistance with HUD CoC program, NOFO. You're more than welcome to email HUD yourself. We also are sending out every CoC is submitting questions to HUD and waiting on some responses. And then you can, if for any access issues with eSnaps, any assistance that you need there, you can try eSnaps at HUD.gov. They have been very responsive very quickly. But if you have any other issues or you want to talk one-on-one with somebody, just reach out to us and we'll set that up. Okay. So as far as timeline goes, the project applications are due on the 12th by 8 p.m. Please send all of your questions about this project. It's just a couple days before by 10 a.m. on December 10th. So 10 a.m. December 10th, submit all your questions by then. We will compile them and we will post all the questions and answers on the website so that everyone has access to the information. And then the final project applications will be due on the 12th at 8 p.m. Okay. I don't believe there are any, that's slide 29 or 29. So let's open it up for some questions right now that people may have. So Susan provided a couple of links in the chat to look at about eligible costs and what you can include in your budget for the project types, which are the program components, is what they're calling them. This is only for nonprofit organizations, right? It's for nonprofits, for local governments, like state government could actually apply, and faith-based organizations. Thank you, Julietta. If you're an LLC that's a nonprofit organization, so no for-profit organizations can apply. Must be a nonprofit.
You have to have a 501c3.
Mm-hmm.
That's the, if you have a 501c3 designation from the IRS, you'll be eligible to apply.
Okay, the NOFO is pretty detailed about what allowable costs are included for the youth demonstration projects, but not for DV programs. I see that Susan put some federal references in the chat. Do we go by those guidelines instead of the NOFO to include what the money will be used for?
So
Hmm.
YHDP is a different kind of program. So I would ignore all references to YHDP because you don't have YHDP programs in your CoC. The references I put in the chat are the kind of authoritative federal rules governing the program. So the eligible costs that are in those that citation will give you the whole laundry list of different things that you can kind of apply for. So I would use that. If you find a place in the NOFO that's not consistent with those regulations, shoot us an email and I'll take a look at it and see how we might reconcile that. I don't think there's anything in the NOFO that is inconsistent with the regulations, but I could have missed something. So Jill, if you want to like share more about what you're thinking about, that's fine, or you can just email us.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Well, then we will close if there are no more comments or questions. And thank you again for joining and already are receiving some letters of intent, even from newer projects and newer agencies. So glad that the word's getting out. And if we are not going to submit a renewal, do we need to do anything?
If you are going to, any project that you want considered should be on the LOI. If you don't list a project on the LOI, the letter of intent, then it will be assumed that you're voluntarily reallocating the funding from that renewal.
Yes. And I want to reiterate that. If you are going to submit a renewal application, even please complete a letter of intent form on that. You can put all of your project applications on one in that one form or that one document. There's a place for like up to 6 project applications. And if you have more than that, then you can add on to it. But anything that you may be applying for, go ahead and submit that to help for planning. Okay. Okay, so we look forward to your questions, and if you have any issues getting into, excuse me, e-snaps or signing up on just getting into e-snaps, that is the most important thing. If you have any questions about eligibility, um, threshold requirements, uh, anything you want to talk through a bit, please reach out to us at cocnofo@hlapinellas.org and keep an eye out on the website. Anyone who submits a letter of intent will receive a direct email with any news and updates that come up. And of course, when the applications are out, when scoring tool is available, and any other information that we can provide. Okay, so thank you and good luck to all. And go come up with some great projects that are very creative, and let's get this let's get this going. I appreciate you. I hope you all have a wonderful day.